At this point, Steven Spielberg can pitch a movie about a sentient guitar and it'd be a huge blockbuster film. Hi guys, today we're going to talk about how I finally watched War Horse after, not watching it forever, and considering that it's a classic, or at least a really good Spielberg movie. So we're going to start off with my opinion, and then we're going to go into why it's so good and what's so great about War Horse. First of all, this movie is beautifully done. I mean, everything about this movie is beautiful to look at. It's like one of those art pieces that you just can't stop staring at because it's just so intricate in its design. That's something that's sort of uncommon in movies, at least in the major blockbuster realm of areas, where you just have a really good movie but it doesn't look super amazing or spectacular. But Spielberg has a eye and an aptitude for quality images that he can produce that translate well to a story on screen. I loved the series of mini stories that occurred one after the other, and with the horse Joey as its main character, you were able to relate to what the horse was going through, but also experience these different sides of World War I that were happening simultaneously. You've got the Germans, you've got the British, you've got soldiers, you've got regular people, you've got French people. It's just all around, and just you sympathize with each story as you are led to. The way it was shown is beautiful and it was gorgeous to look at. Like I said before, it's just something that I'm not gonna get over. It's just the beauty of this movie. The score is what made this movie significant to me in my mind, and what compelled me to and drew me into the world even more. There's something very special about a score that fits well with the theme, the time period that you're in, and then also it has like specific characters. Sometimes the music is its own character and it brings more life to the film than you had ever imagined. And especially with a movie that has a horse. A horse is an animal. Horses don't communicate the way that we do, so the score is what triggers an emotional response and lets us attach certain feelings and reasoning behind an action of an animal like Joey. Because there was more than one story told, there was not a lot of dull moments. This is a 2.5 hour long movie, but there wasn't a lot of moments in this movie where I really just wasn't interested in it anymore and then went on to the next thing and distracted it. There wasn't a lot of dull moments. It is a long movie, granted, but the story is what really drew you in and made you want to watch more and see what happens. But for me, what set this movie apart from other movies with the horse as its main character is that Joey didn't have a narrator. Think of any animal movie, any of them. Most of them have a narrator behind it, especially in horse movies. Dog movies are a little bit different because dogs, we tend to humanize dogs a lot more than horses. But horse movies tend to have narrators behind them. So think of like Spirit or Black Beauty. Both of those movies have a narrator behind it, narrating and speaking out loud the horse's thoughts and telling us rather than showing. Different kind of storytelling. Both stories actually are really good and I really enjoyed both of those movies, so not bashing those movies at all, but this was just War Horse was just a different kind of movie because they didn't have a narrator for Joey. Spielberg chose not to use narration as a influence to the audience's thoughts. Movies like Spirit and Black Beauty have narration that explain the horse's behavior, whereas Spielberg uses other means like visual means and also through the music to explain the horse's behavior in that sense. Again, Spielberg doesn't rely on narration to tell the story. He uses other means to do it, like visuals, to really help you understand what this main character is going through. I think the most remarkable takeaway from this movie was the use of color in this movie. I know that World War I was anything but colorful. That I know. I've read my history. I know what happened in World War I. Trench warfare really is not effective at that point in time. So I know that color is not really the first thing people think about when they think about World War I. When I'm talking about color, the use of color in this movie, War Horse, was so purposeful that you as an audience member, me as an audience member, knew what to pay attention to. If there was any sort of color involved at all, then I knew that that was important to the plot and what it might even be reprised later. And I could tell what was important on screen based on the use of color. But the final scene, the last scene in the entire movie, is a perfect example of what constitutes a Spielberg film. I could go into analysis of the different shots and the different movements that cameras make, but I'm not going to, and I'll maybe do a video about that later. By the way, if you're not subscribed to my channel, I do a lot of videos about this kind of thing, where I explain different movie styles, and hopefully in the future I'll be able to do it even more. I have done a lot of movie reviews, so if you like movie reviews or trailer reactions, you can check out my channel. But if you really like this kind of content, then I would implore you to consider subscribing to my YouTube channel, liking this video, and then ringing the bell for the notifications so that you're one of the first people to know when I upload my newest video. Back to the last scene. The last scene is what really is so beautiful about this. The silence and the lack of dialogue is what really draws you in emotionally and on a deeper level than any amount of dialogue can make. Dialogue is great, but we're very emotional people. You know the saying where a photo is worth 1,000 words? That's just the same in the visual material that is provided for us in Warhorse. At the end of this movie, the biggest thing that triggered me emotionally was the use of silence and just seeing all of that subtext come to the surface and see it emotionally on the actors' faces, feel it through the music swelling, also through the use of color. Oh my gosh, the sunset in this movie is beautiful. I don't know how they captured that. I don't know if it was created digitally or whatever, but it was absolutely gorgeous. That's my opinion on Warhorse. That's what I took away from it as somebody who watches movies a lot. But what is so great about Warhorse? Why is it so good, and why do people love it so much? The reason why I think that Warhorse is such a good movie is because it's a movie about luck. Now, hear me out. Let's break this down a little bit more. World War I was a war that no one in the trenches could ever see an end to. When you're in the trenches, you're like, okay, we're gonna fight them, but we don't even know if we're gonna gain any ground in this trench warfare. We're just gonna fight and then stop and then sleep and then start it all over again the next day. This was a war that the propaganda was, hey, go to war with your buddies, have a great time, and then come back home to your families and say, hey, I went and fought in a war. It's just gonna be a few months. It's not even gonna be that long. That's the kind of propaganda that got people in uniform and out into the world to go fight. But that's not what they experienced at all. World War I is devastating. It's absolutely horrible. Any war is, but World War I was just very taxing on every single soldier that was involved in the battles. Roger Ebert, who is a renowned movie reviewer, if you guys don't know who he is, but he concludes his review of Warhorse with the line, "All of us, men and beasts, have extraordinary good luck." Which I think drives the point home in terms of this movie. It is a movie about luck. There's no way that this series of events could have been planned. The story of Warhorse brings out a particular kind of hope within people and the audience watching. The only reason that Joey and Albie survived till the end of the war is by an enormous string of luck. From what it looks like, Albie didn't join the war until the last few months or weeks of the war. He wasn't old enough when the war had begun. He had to wait to enlist until he was of age, and that's why it took him so long to get to the war itself. And it's the same for Joey. The only reason he survived that long is because of, you know, a series of events. The general that bought him for when the war began, an extremely kind and generous person, actually, as opposed to other generals who were more cruel to their animals and only thought of their animals as a means to an end. And then Joey was also chosen out of all of the horses that were taken. He was chosen to run away with a couple of German soldiers so that they could escape and from the war that was coming. And so on and so forth. Joey had a lot of luck, which is shown throughout the entire movie, and if I told you everything that happened, I would just be summarizing the plot. But that luck brings about the hope that is just within our reach. All of us hope for a situation like Joey, where one event after the other, even though it might be hard, it'll get us to a point where we're in the best place that we could ever end up in. You can try so hard, but sometimes it's just being at the right place at the right time. In any storytelling medium, luck and coincidence are usually used as easy plot devices and create plot holes that people expose later. But Spielberg uses these plot devices not as plot devices, but the main thrust of his purpose of this movie. He uses it as a compelling story instead of a cop-out. And that's what I think is so great about Warhorse, is because it's a movie about luck. It's something that is attainable for everybody in the audience to achieve, but it's nothing within our control. And the movie doesn't end in hopelessness, it ends with a good outcome. So we as audience members are able to watch it and be like, yes, that can totally happen to me. Those series of events, that obviously not the exact series of events, but that kind of series of events can totally happen to me or to my friend or to my parents or whatever. Warhorse is not a conventional horse movie. It doesn't have narration attached to the horse. Like, the horse is its own character, but much like the score, it doesn't speak. Every scene is visually beautiful, like I said before. If you look at anything from Warhorse, it's just gorgeous to look at. And it's an outcome that everybody wants, but no one can control. So the question for this video is going to be, what is your favorite horse movie? Can you leave that in the comments down below? It actually really helps, and I get to interact with people who subscribe to me or even watch my videos. As always, guys, thank you guys so much for watching. Have a great random Thursday. I will see you on the other side of the screen.